Welcome to session 11, where we will be looking at Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, two of the heavyweights in red wine production. In today's session, we will start by looking at the characteristics of the Cabernet Sauvignon grape and the Merlot grape. Next, we will go to Bordeaux, the world capital for fine wine. Here, we will seek to understand the classification system for the region and the differences between right bank wines and left bank wines. Lastly, we will look at other regions around the world that produce outstanding Cabernet and Merlot wine. Starting off today's sessions, we will be asking a couple of questions. Question 1. What meat does an old mature Cabernet Sauvignon go best with? Grilled steak or braised meats? To answer this question, we must think how a wine's structure will change with years of bottle aging. Question 2. How is New World Merlot different from Old World Merlot? Here we have 4 options. Fresh fruit with medium acidity and medium body, or plum and blackberry flavors with high alcohol and low acidity. 3. Plum and blackberry flavor with medium alcohol and medium acidity. Or 4. Fresh fruit with high alcohol and high acidity. To answer this question, we must remember how New World Merlot is made and what the general characteristics of the grape is. Cabernet Sauvignon grape characteristics. Cabernet Sauvignon is one of the 2 dominant grape varieties in Bordeaux and one of the most popular single varietal wines in the world. In order to ripen Cabernet Sauvignon, the climate must be moderate to warm. There are some exceptions like Cabernet from the cool Loire Valley, but they are not very successful wines. Generally speaking, Cabernet is a power grape. It supplies a wine with high tannins, high alcohol, high acidity, and a good sized body. Looking at the flavors and aromas of Cabernet, it is famous for a distinct black currant flavor, and in Bordeaux style wines, it is earthy with a hint of green bell pepper. Interestingly, Cabernet Sauvignon is quite the herbal wine, especially when grown near eucalyptus trees, which somehow flavors the wine. Because of the intense flavor and the solid structure in the wine, wines made from Cabernet Sauvignon have greater aging potential than most other wines. Great Bordeaux easily ages for decades before starting to show their true colors. Merlot grape characteristics. Merlot, compared to Cabernet Sauvignon, is quite different. It also grows in moderate to warm climates, which is why we find it in many blends with Cabernet. But generally speaking, its tannins are low, with high levels of alcohol and low acidity. The aromas are different too. In Merlot, we get dark plum along with chocolate and tobacco. Like Cabernet, Merlot is also a friend of oak, which gives these wines more complexity. The best Merlots are found on the right bank in Bordeaux and differs from the typical Merlot wines. These wines are medium bodied with medium acidity and even have good levels of tannins. Like Cabernets, these wines can age for decades. Today, Merlot is mainly used in blends to balance out the big Cabernet, but some regions, like California and Chile, do produce single varietal wines from Merlot. Style and technique. If we look at Cabernet and Merlot side by side, we can see that the wines are very different. Cabernet has high tannins and acidity, whereas Merlot does not. Cabernet is generally a powerful wine, Merlot is not. The aromas differs too. Cabernet always show black currant along with other aromas such as mint, vanilla, from oak aging and leather. Merlot, on the other hand, is full of plum flavor, often paired with tobacco and chocolate. As we have discovered, they are very different, and this is the exact reason why they work so well together. The capital of fine wine in the world, Bordeaux, is living proof of this. These wines can be highly complex yet balanced, which is why single bottles are sold for thousands of dollars. Many New World producers have learned from this and make excellent blends from the varieties. California, Australia, and Chile are just a few of those which today masters this blend. The Bordeaux wine map. There is no better place to start learning about Cabernet and Merlot than visiting Bordeaux in the southwest of France. Bordeaux is made up of an enormous wine area. More wine is produced here than anywhere else in the world. As such, all of it is not that great, but many producers lives on the grand reputation the region is built on. The two most important winemaking areas in terms of red wine is the left bank and the right bank. These are encircled on the maps here. The left bank is most famous for Cabernet Sauvignon and the right bank for Merlot. Other grape varieties are also used in the blends, but in very small percentages. On the left bank we have three main areas. To the north we have the Medoc appellation, in the middle we have the Haut-Medoc, and to the south we have Graves. Haut-Medoc is where most of the top Bordeaux producers are located, including villages such as Margaux, Pauillac, and Saint-Julien. Likewise, there are a couple of outstanding producers in Graves. Whilst most of the left bank wines are blends, we do come across some which are made from Cabernet Sauvignon only. On the right bank, there are two main villages worth considering. The larger one is Saint-Emilion, and the smaller, much more expensive one is Pomerol. Saint-Emilion wines are very different in style from the left bank because the main grape is Merlot, generally lighter and easier to drink. Remember, these are not lesser wines by any means, they are just different in style. Pomerol is the other important village on the right bank. If a wine comes from Pomerol, expect it to be expensive. Pomerol is also different to the norm for Merlot. In Pomerol, they managed to make Merlot into very big wines, with good levels of tannins and great structure. In style, these can resemble the wines on the left bank. Classification system starting with the left bank. If we take a look at the appellation system in Bordeaux, we see it is different from that of Burgundy. In Bordeaux, it is the producers of wine houses which are awarded cru status, not the vineyard as it is in Burgundy. Depending on where in Bordeaux the vineyards are located, different classification systems apply. This system came into place in 1855, with additions being made to consider the right bank and Graves producers. We will start by looking at the left bank. The very finest producers are awarded with first growth status. These include 5 producers: Château Latour, Château Margaux, Château Lafite Rothschild, Château Haut-Brion, and Château Mouton Rothschild. The next level down is second growth, which goes through to 5th growth. Wines which have been given any of these growth status can be considered excellent, but first growth wines are arguably amongst the best and most expensive in the world. And addition has been made in later years to recognize good producers who didn't quite make the cut. These are classified as cru bourgeois. Along with the cru status, it is important for the producers to state the village or area from which it has been made. Some villages like Margaux and Pauillac are famous for good quality and demand premium prices. Blends from different villages can be labeled under the region, such as Haut-Médoc or Médoc. The lowest level wines are simply labeled Bordeaux. These wines represent the area where the best bargain can be made. Unfortunately, it is also the appellation where the least good wine is found. Left bank labeling. Here we see 5 different labels. In Bordeaux, it is the producers which are awarded cru status, and you can see all the labels have chateau or producer's name stated on the label for that reason, not the field's name as it is in Burgundy. Another thing we notice is grand vin. This is supposed to mean great wine, resembling high quality, but in fact producers can put this term on the label if they like, and for that reason it means nothing. Starting at the top left, we have a Premier Grand Cru Classé label from the producer Chateau Margaux. As we recall, Premier Grand Cru Classé is the finest wines from the finest producers in Bordeaux. Underneath and to the right, we have a second growth and a fifth growth producer. They are from different villages in Haut-Médoc. The second growth wine is from Saint-Estèphe, and the fifth growth wine is from Pauillac. We can see that the chateaux are different: Cour d'Estournel and Batailly. Importantly, however, we cannot distinguish between the cru levels, as both of them state Grand Cru Classé from 1855. This means that both were awarded Grand Cru status, but not which status. Normally, this can be found on the back of the bottle. In the top right corner, we have Chateau Bel Air. This wine is from Haut-Médoc, and so we know it is not from a single village, but a blend from various villages. On the bottom of the label we can see the Cru Bourgeois sign, which wines are awarded on a yearly basis for high quality. Lastly, we have the generic Bordeaux wine made from Roux Saint-André. By looking at the label, we can notice that the only wine referring to Bordeaux is the generic Bordeaux wine. The rest refers to their specific growth area or village, indicating a higher quality level. Right bank appellation system. Saint-Emilion and Pomerol are not included in the left bank's appellation system. For some reason, Pomerol still hasn't got an appellation system and appears not to need it, as wines from here are more expensive than ever before. Some demand even higher prices than first growth producers on the left bank. Saint-Emilion, however, has adopted their own appellation system. At the top we have Premier Grand Cru Classé A, which includes 2 producers. Next we have Premier Grand Cru Classé B, which is a larger category. These 2 categories makes absolutely great wines. The last cru in Saint-Emilion is Grand Cru Classé. After that, wines from here are labeled as Saint-Emilion. Here we can see the labels from Saint-Emilion. To the right we have the lowest cru label. This is a Grand Cru Classé. In the middle we have a Premier Grand Cru Classé B wine from Chateau Ausson. On the left we have a wine from the newest Première Grand Cru Classé A producer, Chateau Cheval Blanc, was awarded Première Grand Cru Classé A status in 2006. Flavors of Bordeaux. When we try to generalize flavors and styles of Bordeaux, it becomes a little tricky. In fact, there are many styles and each chateau and village differs. However, as we have already discussed, there are some similarities in left bank wines, and there are some in right bank wines. Left bank wines are predominantly made from Cabernet Sauvignon. Right bank wines are mainly produced from merlot. Left bank normally have higher acidity in its wines than right bank due to the choice of grapes. Generally speaking, left bank wines are fuller bodied too. Aromas differ as well. Left bank has black currant notes, black cherry, earth, and green bell pepper. Right bank has plum, raspberry, strawberry, and some vegetal notes. Both, however, are oat, which provides them with a bit of spice. Other Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot regions. There are other great Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot regions in the world. Some make wine in the style of Bordeaux, others in a New World style, which are more fruit-driven. First, we are going to swing by Italy and the Super Tuscans, which revolutionized the Italian wine industry. Next, we will visit California and Washington State. Australia is next, with two intensely popular regions such as Margaret River and Coonawarra. Lastly, we will finish with Chile, where the world is getting the majority of its Cabernet Sauvignon bulk wine from. Tuscany and Super Tuscans. In the 1970s, Italy's wine laws were ensuring producers made mediocre wines, which could not compete on an international level. In 1971, a producer went against the establishment and produced a wine outside the DOC regulations. His wine was released in 1974 after maturation and was classified as vino da tavola, wine, the lowest regulation status possible, only that the price was far higher than most DOC wines. This started a revolution in Tuscany, and producers started not to follow the DOC or DOCG regulations. Instead, they followed the new trend and made higher quality wine and labeled themselves as Super Tuscans. Today, Italian wine law has caught up, and many areas and practices now have IGT or DOC status. The first wine was in 1974 and was inspired by the greats of Bordeaux, and so are many of the wines still today. It is, however, important to remember that not many rules are in place when labeling oneself under the IGT regulation, so anything goes. The main three grapes used to make Super Tuscans, however, are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Sangiovese. These can be varietally labeled as 100% Cabernet or Merlot, etc. They can also be blends. Not all Super Tuscans are great, but the best are amongst the finest wines of Italy and indeed the world. California and Washington State. Washington in the north of the United States and California in the south both produce outstanding Cabernet and Merlot wines. Both states have regions that are moderate to warm, which allows the grapes to ripen fully. Here we have two styles of Cabernet and Merlot wines. We have the fruit-driven wines and we have the earthy blends in the style of Bordeaux. The greatest of these, such as rich Montebello, easily rivals the best in Bordeaux. Generally speaking, the wines from here have higher alcohol, higher tannins, and are fuller bodied. The fruit aromas are warmer, like stewed fruits. It can be easier to get into the fruit-driven versions first before entering into the earthy Bordeaux-style wines. Australia. Australia have several great regions for producing Cabernet and Merlot. Two of the best are Margaret River and Coonawarra. In Australia, it is typical to find Cabernet in blends with Merlot or Syrah. In general, wines from here are medium to high in acidity and have high levels of tannins. If we look at Margaret River, we have a climate incredibly similar to that in Bordeaux. For that reason, the wines are mostly blends and done in a Bordeaux style. These wines do not have the same aging potential, but can show mature flavors much sooner and at a lower price. Coonawarra is quite different and mainly produces Cabernet Sauvignon as a varietal wine. These can be either oaked or unoaked and are characterized by dark berry flavors and eucalyptus flavors from the eucalyptus plantations in the area. Chile. As mentioned in previous sessions, Chile has the perfect conditions for growing great wines. As such, they also produce a lot of Cabernet and Merlot. One of the best regions in Chile for this is Maipo, where the climate is moderate to warm. Here we see a great deal of bulk wine production, but also a few high quality producers do exist. The bulk wines are mainly unoaked and fruity, whereas the high quality wines are meaty and spicy with fruit flavors. Food pairing. Merlot is easy to pair with food and will practically go with any meat dish you serve. It also goes great with umami dishes and even fish. For that reason, we will not go into detail about its pairing. Instead, we will focus on Cabernet Sauvignon on its own or blended with Merlot. Steak is the first thing that comes to mind. Cabernet loves a rare grilled steak, especially if the wine is young. This is because the bitterness from the charring will counteract the high tannins in the wine. Best meats to serve with Cabernet have a bit of fat too, like ribeye or sirloin. For older wines, it is better to serve braised meats. These flavors are not as intense and will therefore not overwhelm the wine, which over the years have lost some of its tannins, acidity, and body. Another winner is cheese. Brie, blue cheese, cheddar, you name it, we love it. Mushrooms, this is especially for wines made in the earthy Bordeaux style. Lastly, we look for herbs in dishes, and Cabernet is a natural. Because of the eucalyptus and other herbal notes we get in the wine, this will complement each other. Regarding what to avoid, generally speaking, avoid anything from the ocean. Question of the day. Now looking back at the questions posed earlier in this session, question 1. What meat does an old or mature Cabernet Sauvignon pair best with? Grilled steak or braised meats? The answer to this is braised meats. Because mature wines lose some of their structure and become more delicate with the years, they can't stand up to grilled steaks. They are simply overwhelmed. With grilled steaks, it is much better to find a younger Cabernet with high levels of tannins. Question 2 focus on Merlot. The question was, what characterizes New World Merlot? Here we have to choose the one which comes closest to the answer. The correct answer is number 2, plum, blackberry, high alcohol and low acidity. It is this easy drinking style of wine which had everyone crave merlot back in the days. In summary, it is not strange why some of the greatest wines in this world are blends between cabernet and merlot. The two grapes simply complement each other, which allows for complex and balanced wines. On their own, they are different. Cabernet Sauvignon is a powerhouse of structure and needs red grilled meat to dampen its tannins. Older wines are great with lighter meat dishes. Merlot, on the other hand, is easy drinking, unless of course it is produced in Bordeaux. Merlot on its own can also be paired with practically anything, kind of like Pinot Noir, just with much less acidity. I hope you had fun learning about Cabernet and Merlot. Best of luck on your questionnaire.